Okay, so are you ready to dive into like a really, really deep rabbit hole of coffee?
I've got my coffee mug ready. Let's do it.
Because we're talking about making amazing coffee at home, not just like drinkable, like seriously good.
Yeah, that close your eyes and sigh kind of coffee.
Exactly. And we always start these deep dives with you, our awesome listeners. Someone asked, how do I make really good coffee? Reddit, of course.
Oh, Reddit, the land of coffee lovers and strong opinions.
So many. But honestly, it was a goldmine. People who really know their stuff.
Okay, so spill the beans. What jumped out from that thread?
Fresh beans. Everyone, and I mean everyone, was obsessed. Like less than a week since roasting fresh.
See, this is where it gets interesting. It's not just about being a coffee snob.
Oh.
It's chemistry. Those amazing flavor compounds, they disappear over time.
So there's actually a scientific reason why that bag of beans buried in the back of my pantry might not be cutting it.
Exactly. Think of it like, a spice rack. The longer those spices sit there, the less potent they become.
Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding stale flavors. Freshly roasted beans release carbon dioxide. And if those beans haven't had enough time to off-gas, your brew might taste a bit, well, off.
Off-gassing, huh? I've heard that term before, but what's the ideal time frame for peak coffee freshness?
Aim for beans that are roasted within the past 2 weeks, ideally between 5 and 14 days after the roast date. They've had just enough time to off-gas, but are still bursting with flavor.
So we've got our freshly roasted, properly off-gassed beans.
Time to talk grinders. And specifically, why the Redditors practically declared war on blade grinders.
I think I know where this is going.
Burr grinder is the way to go, according to, well, everyone on that thread.
Okay, I get it. Burr grinder. But I've been using my blade grinder for ages. What's the big deal?
Picture this. You're chopping veggies, but instead of nice, even pieces, it's a chaotic mess. Some huge, some tiny.
Okay, so far so good.
That's your blade grinder. Chunks of coffee, all different sizes. Means some parts get over-extracted bitter, other parts under-extracted weak.
Oh. So it's about evenness, making sure all the coffee grounds are basically the same size.
Exactly. Burr grinder crushes those beans evenly. Two surfaces grinding them up into this nice, consistent powder.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light. Consistent grind, consistent flavor.
It's all about maximizing those flavors.
Okay, so consistency is key for a balanced and flavorful brew. Makes sense.
Exactly. Now, there are different types of burr grinders out there, but the Redditors seem to be big fans of electric burr grinders, especially the Baratza Encore.
Baratza Encore, got it. But before we go full coffee nerd on burr grinders, let's talk about actually brewing the coffee. Having the right beans and a good grinder is just the beginning. So we've got our fresh beans, we've got a good burr grinder. Now let's talk brewing methods. Because honestly, even with the best beans and a grinder, you can still mess things up if you don't brew it right.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like having top-notch ingredients, but zero cooking skills.
Right.
How do we actually brew this?
Pour over, French press, AeroPress.
Maybe we should break it down a bit. For everyone who's not, a total coffee nerd.
Yeah.
Yet.
Simplify it for us. What are the big differences?
Okay, so picture this. Pour over. All about precision. You're slowly pouring hot water over those grounds.
Sounds kind of intimidating. I'm more of a dump it in and hope for the best kind of person.
It takes practice, but the result? Super clean, bright coffee.
Yeah.
Floral, delicate flavors, really smooth.
Fancy, like a Michelin star cup of coffee.
Right. Now, total opposite end of the spectrum, French press, much more forgiving, great for beginners.
Ah, yes, the French press. That takes me back to college. Felt sophisticated even if it wasn't.
Exactly. And you get a totally different cup. Bolder, richer, more texture even.
Yeah.
Because it's not filtered as much. And then there's the AeroPress that's like the cool kid on the block.
Yeah. What's so special about the AeroPress? It seems like everyone who has one swears by it.
It's kind of the best of both worlds. Quick, portable, easy to clean, good for travel, busy mornings, you name it.
The multi-tool of coffee brewing. I love it. So first up, re-wetting the filter. They said it helps get rid of any papery taste that can sneak into your coffee.
Smart. It's such a small step, but it makes a difference. You're essentially rinsing away anything that could affect the flavor.
Makes sense.
Can we talk about the golden ratio? Everyone was throwing out numbers like it was a secret code.
Yeah, the coffee to water ratio. What's the deal with that?
It's not as complicated as it sounds. It's just the amount of coffee to water. And it impacts how strong or weak your coffee ends up being.
So more coffee, stronger brew. Got it. But what were those specific numbers they were talking about?
1 gram of coffee for every 15 grams of water. It ensures you're extracting all the good stuff from the beans without going overboard. Too much water, and you'll end up with coffee-flavored water. Not good. Too little, and you risk over-extracting, which can make it bitter. Oh, and another thing, this one might sound weird, but hear me out. Blooming.
Blooming! Like with flowers? What does that have to do with coffee?
It's a simple step, but it makes a huge difference, trust me. You basically pour a little bit of hot water over the grounds before brewing. Just enough to wet them. Let it sit for like 30 seconds.
Okay, and that does what exactly?
Remember how we talked about those flavor compounds? They're volatile? Well, blooming helps release some of the unwanted stuff that can make your coffee taste bitter.
So it's kind of like pre-rinsing your coffee to get rid of the bitterness?
Yeah, kind of. It just helps those flavors bloom, you know?
I can get behind that. So precision is key. But wait, there's more. The pouring technique itself sounds like a delicate dance. This Redditor specifically mentions something called counterclockwise donuts. Ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, the counterclockwise donuts, classic. You basically pour the water in slow concentric circles, moving counterclockwise around the filter.
Counterclockwise, got it. But why so specific about the direction?
It's all about making sure the water flows evenly through all the grounds and prevents something called channeling. Channeling basically means the water's taking shortcuts, just flowing through certain parts of the coffee bed and leaving some grounds over-extracted and others under-extracted.
So those counterclockwise donuts are like ensuring all the coffee grounds get their moment to shine.
Exactly. It's all about that even extraction.
People were really into water temperature.
Oh yeah. It's huge. Too hot, you scorch those beans. Too cold, and you're not extracting all that goodness.
Makes sense. They were recommending a specific range, right? Something like 185 to 205.
You got it. Right in that sweet spot. But honestly, not everyone's walking around with a thermometer glued to their kettle.
Definitely not. Any tips for us normal people?
Easy peasy. Boil your water, then let it sit for like a minute or two. That should bring it down to the right temp.
Perfect. Simple, effective. I like it. Okay, so we've got our beans, our grinder, our brewing methods sorted, water temp. Anything else we should know about before we go caffeine crazy?
Let's see. Water quality.
Okay, so what makes good coffee water then? Like, what should we be looking for?
The ideal is water with a balanced mineral content. There are certain minerals like magnesium and calcium that can actually make those tasty flavors in the coffee come out even more. But like with most things, too much of a good thing can backfire.
How so?
Well, if your water's too hard, meaning it's got a ton of minerals in it, it can sometimes make your coffee taste kind of chunky or dull. And then on the flip side, if it's super soft water with almost no minerals, it might not pull out enough flavor, leaving your coffee tasting kind of bland.
Ah, so it's all about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. You don't have to go crazy and become a water expert. But if you're serious about your coffee, experimenting with different kinds of water, or even just using filtered water to get rid of impurities, can make a difference.
That makes sense. I've even heard of some hardcore coffee people using bottled water that's specifically made for brewing.
Oh yeah, there are companies out there doing that. Third Wave Water is one. They sell these mineral packets that you add to distilled or filtered water to get that perfect mineral balance for coffee. They were even on Shark Tank.
We're putting so much effort into everything else, might as well use good water too.
Exactly. All that chlorine and stuff in unfiltered water. It can totally mess with your coffee's flavor.
Yeah.
You want to highlight those subtle flavors, not mask them. And speaking of subtle,
Yeah.
you see the whole filter debate?
Filters. I thought a filter was just, a filter. What's the big deal?
Oh, there's a whole world of filters. Paper filters, they're like the classic. Clean, bright cup. Metal filters let more oils through so you get a heavier, more intense flavor.
And some people even use cloth filters, right?
Yep, they're trendy right now. Give you a little more texture in your cup.
It's amazing how much goes into a simple cup of coffee. I saw this post the other day. Someone was raving about a French press video on r/coffee. It said it was the top rated one. Their whole thing was that even though it's super simple, you can still get amazing results.
For sure. People love the French press because it's easy to use, and you still get a really rich, full-bodied cup of coffee.
Okay, so break it down for me. What were the key takeaways from that top-rated method?
All right, so first things first, you got to start with freshly ground coffee. Remember those burr grinders we were talking about? Yeah, they're still your best friend here. Then you just put those grounds in the French press, pour hot water over them, and, this is important, let it steep for about 4 minutes. That lets all the flavors come out without getting too bitter.
Gotcha. Coarser grind, 4-minute steep. What's next?
Once it's done steeping, You slowly press down the plunger, which separates the grounds from the brewed coffee, and boom, that's it. You've got yourself a tasty, satisfying cup of coffee.
See, that does sound ridiculously easy. But I'm guessing even with a method as simple as the French press, having fresh beans and a good grinder still play a big part,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Those are non-negotiables no matter what. They're the base for a truly great cup of coffee. But it's not just about the equipment and methods, you know? It's also about learning to really appreciate those flavors, developing your palate.
It sounds fancy. What does that even mean?
It's just about slowing down and paying attention to what you taste. What are the aromas, the flavors? What's the texture like in your mouth? Is it bright and acidic, rich and chocolatey, nutty and smooth?
I like that. It's like turning your coffee break into its own little mindful experience.
Right. And as you start doing that, you'll figure out what you like best. It's all about finding what speaks to your taste buds.
So true. And that's what makes coffee so cool. There's this whole world of flavors to discover. Just like wine, the environment the coffee grows in, the dirt, how high up it is, the weather, it all comes together to create that specific, unique taste.
Exactly. It's fascinating.
It really is. I'm starting to understand why people get so into coffee.
Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. And the best part is, the journey of discovering all these different coffees is just as fun as finally finding the perfect cup.
I love that. Well, there you have it, everyone. From the absolute necessity of fresh beans and the magic of a good burr grinder to the artistry of brewing and this whole concept, consider this your crash course on how to level up your coffee game.
And remember, the most important ingredient is just being curious and willing to try new things. Don't be afraid to experiment with different brewing methods, different beans, different roasts. Most importantly, just enjoy the process.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I'm feeling inspired to go make myself a delicious cup of coffee. Happy brew!